Crysis was released on PC in 2007. It set a milestone in gaming, as it was released with future hardware in mind. As such, it became known more for its crippling requirements than its compelling gameplay. And that's a shame, because even without the amazing graphics, Crysis was still rather incredible. It took an open-ended approach, presenting players with large open areas and allowed them the freedom to reach the next checkpoint pretty much any way they could imagine. One could simply cloak past enemies, run in and start a fist fight, or take cover and take a more stop-and-pop approach. Or hell, you could just go totally crazy and throw a turtle at someone. In the end, Crysis was a success. We know for certain that it sold at least 3 million copies, but when compared to its main competitor in the genre that same year, Call of Duty 4, its sales pale by comparison. So, likely influenced by those sales numbers, Crytek announced that Crysis 2 would be a multi-platform release, meaning it would be making its way to consoles. Right off the bat, people were concerned, and rightfully so. These machines were released in 2005 and 6, and the first Crysis was made with PCs newer than 2007 in mind. The math just didn't add up, and the realization that some compromises would need to be made in order to make Crysis work on consoles soon set in. As a huge fan of the original Crysis, I admit I was skeptical. There was no doubt in my mind that levels would likely be smaller, powers possibly stripped due to being designed around a controller, AI may be dumber, and one that made me sick to think about, the graphics might be worse. Well, it's finally here, so how does the PC version hold up? When any huge Crysis fan loads up Crysis 2, the first thing they'll undoubtedly want to do is crank those graphical settings to the max. However, unlike the first game that presents you with sliders and drop-down menus to change practically every aspect of the game, you see this. You get to choose from one of just 3 graphical settings: high, very high, and extreme. The only real difference between them seems to be draw distance and the number of visible light sources. On my PC, I get a solid 60 frames per second on high and between 40 and 60 on extreme at 1080p. Now compare that to the original Crysis, where even today I get frame rates in the 30s and 40s for the most part on max settings, and it would seem that having to release a game on the consoles may have actually benefited the performance of the PC version. It's a nice sign, but it's undoubtedly a disappointment to those who had hoped Crysis 2 would be their next benchmarking tool. Regardless of the lack of settings, though, and a curious lack of support for anything other than DirectX 9, which is funny because Crysis actually supported DirectX 10, I will go on record right now and say this is the best looking game I have seen to date. Everything about it, from the lighting, oh god the lighting, to the art direction is just incredibly appealing to me. Crytek absolutely nailed the atmosphere of a city in ruin and the feeling of an invasion taking place. Also of note, the game features a soundtrack with contributions from one Hans Zimmer. Yes, that Hans Zimmer, from Inception. The soundtrack in this game is amazing and should not be taken lightly. The game's story goes like this. You play as a marine named Alcatraz. When his submarine gets destroyed, he barely escapes and comes across a character familiar to fans of the first game named Prophet. Prophet gives his nanosuit, a suit which gives people superhuman abilities like cloaking, armor, and super strength, to Alcatraz, and off you go to find someone named Gould. Like R2-D2 in Star Wars, this suit holds the key to stopping the alien invaders known as the Ceph, which is short for cephalopod or squid because they look like squid. Basically, it's your typical "you're mankind's only hope" story, and thankfully it's kept pretty minimal. It's told through a combination of in-between stage cutscenes, which can be skipped, and in-game cutscenes, which cannot. The problem is the delivery is rather unenthusiastic at times, and you never really get the gist of what the hell is happening because it's kind of incoherent in its presentation to you. You stop and watch things happen and have people bark orders to you, but you somehow still feel disconnected from everything that's going on, and it never really manages to click. Still, it's not like it's any worse than Crysis was, but I found it odd that they went out of their way and hired renowned writer Richard Morgan to pen the story, then they went and botched its delivery. Oh well, there is a novel out there for any of you interested in the story, so try that instead. Anyway, the real question here is whether or not the open-ended gameplay of Crysis has survived the transition to running on much less powerful hardware. Thankfully, I can report that it definitely does. The areas are noticeably smaller, but it surprisingly doesn't end up being a bad thing. You're still given a ton of freedom in your approach to each situation, enough that the suit actually recommends tactics to you this time, so the core gameplay is still there. The suit's powers have thankfully been streamlined and not stripped, with the only notable one missing being speed. It's now no longer a 30-mile-per-hour dash, but more of a Call of Duty-esque sprint. So that kinda sucks, but still, you can cloak, grab guys by the throat, and throw them 50 yards just like before. You just need to learn to watch your power a bit more. You can also now combine abilities, like being able to super jump while cloaked, which is nice. The single-player campaign will take upwards of 10 hours for most people to complete. I've found that I'm getting a lot more out of it than that, though, because I can't seem to stop replaying levels. Seriously, once you have your suit upgraded using the new perk system they have in place, you might feel compelled to either completely overpower enemies and feel like a god on lower difficulty, or try your luck on the post-human warrior difficulty since things will be significantly more balanced out. Regardless, this is where the open-ended approach the game takes shines, as you'll likely play the same scenario 15 different ways. This is something that sets the Crysis franchise apart from the vast majority of its competition, and it's honestly done as well here as I've ever seen it. The game is downright addictive. Once you complete the story mode, there is a multiplayer mode, and I've found it to be very fun when it actually works. It's basically a Call of Duty clone, complete with a leveling and perk system, and even kill streaks. And the kill streaks are brilliantly implemented because instead of being rewarded for camping and taking out people from behind, you actually have to run to their dead corpse and pick up a dog tag they've left behind, and collecting the dog tags enables the kill streak awards. Unfortunately, on the PC side of things, just a week into release, there are already numerous cheaters, and the sad discovery was recently made that the game has a lack of any anti-cheat implementation whatsoever. Basically, you can simply alter your suit energy, health, whatever you want on the files on your own hard drive, and the servers will accept them. No outside trainers or bots required. In addition to this, pirates are also apparently playing the game online, so the experience is pretty much shot to hell as of the time of this review. So, I haven't spent too much time in multiplayer aside from the first couple of days, but I liked what I played. I'm sure it holds up on consoles much better. Lastly, I have to talk about this. The game, while a lot of fun, is riddled with annoying bugs. Like, the AI will sometimes get stuck, stand still, or seemingly just forget you're even there. There's an incredibly inexcusable bug where all of the nano catalyst or whatever it is you collect to upgrade your suit powers just disappears when you quit and reload your game. Really, you could have been saving for 10 stages, and if you forgot to spend it before quitting, you just lost it all. Congratulations. It's insane that such things got past QA, but they did, and they need to be addressed quickly. Hopefully Crytek gets a patch out soon to fix these issues, especially those pertaining to multiplayer, but as it stands, the game needs some work. In the end, Crysis 2 is a mixed bag on PC. It has all the makings of a classic. I'm not exaggerating when I say the gameplay of the single player is some of the most fun and addictive I've experienced in recent memory. Really, I can't put it down. And I honestly feel like I'd spend a lot of time in the game's multiplayer too if they just fix it. But as it stands, I have to rate what I have at my disposal. And what I have at my disposal is still worth a B. Fix the issues, Crytek, and you have an easy A. Maybe even an A+. Thank you for watching. As always, please check out ControlAltKill.org for more information on this game and all your gaming needs. Till next time,